Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and call the meeting to order. Can we have the roll call, please?
Yes. Boba, chairperson is not here today. Okay, so Preston Elkins, was he showing up later? No. Okay, Rustin Self,
Here.
Deborah Stone,
Here.
Chris Wood,
Here.
okay, we do have forms.
Okay, great. We'll move on to item 3, approval of the minutes. Does everybody have a chance to review them? If so, I will entertain a motion. So moved. Need a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion, a second to approve the minutes. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes. We're gonna move on to item number 4, discussion action items. Fiscal year 25 preliminary budget. Take that, PJ.
Y'all are overly abundantly aware of our situation as far as not having a finance director at this time. I'm gonna let our consultant kind of give you a rundown of what the current plan is. So that y'all are aware that. So Javier, do you mind giving them a recap of why we're loading the preliminary budget as our previous year's budget? If you're talking, you're muted. Oh, no, maybe.
There you go. Thank you, Chair. The reason we came through with the budget is because as we're going through the reconciliations, which I am at March right now, so that'll make us current, we are missing revenue. So during the time period from, I would say from June through March, revenue wasn't being recorded, and the way it was being recorded is as it came in through the bank is when it was being recognized. So it's kind of, there was no accounts receivable. So that's where we're at on that. We're just trying to establish how much revenue came in and what was the source of it and which fund does it belong into. So that seems to be one of the bigger hurdles that we've had, but we've caught up. Once I get March completed, we can move forward and do some forecasting. And the way I was explaining it is what we could do is we could take the prior 3 months or the last quarter of last year and do a comparison to see how much was spent and how much revenue came in. So that'll enable us to figure out where we're going to be at in the year. Thus, we can put together a budget. Now, the mayor and I and the fire chief were in a meeting, and one of the suggestions that I put out there was, why don't we just take the budget that we have for FY24 and we add knowns? And that would be, for instance, if you guys gave a raise to staff, all city staff of 3%, a COLA type adjustment, we would add that in. And then one of my biggest challenges to the group was find out which projects are being completed so we could take those off. And then, of course, what new money did you receive through either legislative purposes or any federal money? And we would add that in. So in a sense, what I call it is a roll forward. We would roll forward, especially like your capital projects funds. So we would have a better idea. Now, one of the things about capital projects is you have to be funded. So you have to have some sort of appropriation to let you move forward. So we should already know what we've been appropriated for in FY25. So that's kind of the model that we're going to put together. I will be there next week, and we will work on that as well as getting the financial records more up to date. Does anyone have any questions? And I can move on to the balance sheet.
Can you, I mean, I'm not involved in any of the personnel matters and stuff like that, but what was the main reason why our budget is in such a shambles? So it's like individual, it's a combination of things.
That's why we've hired Javier to come in and evaluate and correct everything that needs to be corrected and give us some guidance on what went wrong where, so that we can make the corrections. We don't really have a specific answer to that yet. Javier, do you have anything to add to that question, sir?
I do, and I think a budget is, the way I look at it is kind of a fuel gauge. That's all it is. You know, how many miles do you have left to travel before you either need to pull over and get more gas? So, because things or transactions were not being recorded in the proper bucket, and by that I mean the count and the fund, then it was hard to figure out where you were at in a budget. So what I mean by that is, again, capital projects, a lot of the transactions were first going into your general fund. Thus, your general fund may have looked like it was spending more than it had, but the transactions between the general fund and a due from to the capital projects still needs to be recorded. So my plan next week is to go through and start reconciling the balance sheet. Now, know that I've been reconciling cash because cash is where you start. And then what we're going to do next is go through the revenue to make sure it's in the proper bucket, and then go through expenses. Now, the difficult part about his expenses is I really don't know if it belongs in one budget or one project or another, because I'm not familiar with the processes. So on that one, I will need your staff. I mean, I'm trying to think of who to
What's
go
his
through and help me with that.
Each individual department does what it's supposed to do. So it's just gonna take some time. This deposit was for police, this was for streets. So
when I talked to, William, he, and correct me if I'm not saying this. The expenses themselves were all reported. Maybe they weren't reported exactly in the right place, but they were reported, right?
Yes. Yes.
Revenue, the stuff that came in on the bank statements that was transferred in by wire. Those items were not reported because they just didn't do it. They didn't do the entries. So now he has to go back and do the entries to report them in the right place. And I guess my other question, but the other income that came in from like water bills or what, that was okay.
Yeah.
That was people giving you the money. Okay, but then my question is on these bills, on the expenses, we're saying that there's no, when they paid the expense, they put it in the general fund, but they didn't necessarily move it. Is that what?
Yes. So I think that.
So there's no notes on those invoices that say this is for that or whatever, right?
Not, okay, I haven't got to that. I haven't pulled invoices to see where they if they were coded in some fashion, or if a capital project was specifically listed. I haven't looked at that, so that is something that I plan to do next week.
And like who here would have the ability to do
That was my question.
that? Individual departments will know this?
So we'll know specifically what is supposed to be coming to the departments. So we'll have to give it him to read out what goes where. As far as who has the responsibility to enter all of that. I would say that at this time, we can't really pinpoint where the specific cause was. But at the same time, we know there's an issue.
And how long do you think this will take? Do you have
I
an
don't know.
Like
I-
4 months, a year? 6
No,
months?
I am thinking, okay, the way I think is this, is let's go after the bigger transactions and get those properly recorded. And by that, I mean anything over 50,000. And then hopefully we can establish a pattern, and then we can go back and scrub out those up to, let's say, 5,000. But then we got to stop at some point, because we will be doing it for a whole year if we don't. So I have to,
What about the auditor? You said that the auditor might not do it the next year, but
no, well, what
But
happened with
you might
Scott,
still.
yeah, okay, so I talked to Scott. He was on a limited basis because your audit includes a single audit, and he was not approved to perform an audit that included a single audit. So what he did is he took all the classes, he did everything right. However, the state auditor's office had never gotten through to approve that for him. And he sent me an email, I believe last week, and which he did get the approval. He sent me the letter. So he has been approved to do the single audit. So he could do it up to the 8 years that are allowed. I don't know what year he's in, but I think he might be in year 2 or 3, because Beasley and Mitchell was your auditor before they moved over and did something else, right? Am I correct with that? To say that?
So that he's aware of these things and he kind of knows it already.
Yeah,
right? So,
I've had, because hello?
yeah,
So what happened with that is he did not want to take us on because, again, he's limited to also to only 12 clients. So then I talked to him and, kind of convinced him that him rotating off would really be detrimental to the city. And he agreed. He did have that one hurdle that I spoke about, the single audit, and he was able to get through that. So it worked out for the better for us.
so do we have to have all this done by the time he starts his audit?
Yes, it would be nice to have we need to have a complete trial balance for him. I mean, right now what's pushing is we need to get the third quarter into LGBMS, which is your DFA reporting. We need to do that next week. And then your budget is another hurdle. You have 2 big hurdles before we can start focusing on the audit.
And when does the audit start?
Well, my input on that is to try to get, if Scott wants to come out and do some internal control work, which we're probably going to get hammered on, yeah, let him come out and do that. So that would probably be right in July, August. And then if we could have him hold back so we can get your books in order and we can get everything else done. Now, know that we can, because it's due, I believe, December 1st. So we can have him come in and get that done. It's up to his schedule too. So we got to consider that. So we won't be late. Now, one of the things is, a thing that I was telling the fire chief and the mayor is, I'm not the solution for this. You guys need to have people there to do the work. I'm kind of like the gauze, I will hold the bleeding back, but somebody needs to be there to do the work. And that's kind of the thing that is a little bit different for me with this client, is that when I leave, nobody's continuing to do really anything to fix this matter. So I know that you guys are all very busy, but if we really need to get somebody in one of those seats, either the director of finance or no, that would be we need to get a director of finance in there to get that done. I'm not saying, go and haphazardly hire somebody, get a good candidate, but know that that's a big thing because we have a huge internal control weakness. And the issue is I can write up your journal entries in Excel. I can even input them into the system, but I can't post them. It's just, it's just no control if I post entries in your system, because that means no one's reviewing what I'm doing. So
Yeah,
that would be really bad.
applicant that we interviewed this week that's in salary negotiation.
Okay, so. Correct me if I'm wrong, but the reason we're in this mess in the first place is our last finance director. Was not probably not properly trained and not knowledgeable enough to. Do what needed to be done, is that correct?
That's beyond what I.
And then there was no oversight that could identify that we had these deficiencies.
Which is part of the reason Javier recommends that we start doing a quarterly audit so that we can stay on top of any issues that may arise. Because when it comes to finance, you just see it quarterly as a finance committee. And we don't have the access with the income. Right now, we only have one person with complete access and income who doesn't have a financial background. We're having trouble getting people the right permissions, like our CPO, to do what they need to do. So as far as the cause, I can't give you an answer on.
So I think moving forward, sorry, this is Veronica. So moving forward, I think our best bet is to find a great candidate for this finance position. We do have Scott will be his second year on the audit. So if we could get him to stay the 4 years to get us through this trying time, then we can start getting back on track. To your point, Chris, there were some, just the entries just weren't put in correctly. And if you recall, we didn't have a finance meeting for like 3 months. We missed one finance meeting. So then when we called it, that's when we kind of caught wind of all of this. So moving forward, we're hoping that we can get this candidate or one of the candidates that have applied into this position so that they can work hand in hand with Javier, and we can get to a point to where we're not going to miserably fail the audit. We will get through the audit.
So I guess there's no chance that Marilyn would come back and temporarily assist us on an interim basis.
That's.
So
then
I thought of that as well, and I don't know if that'll mess with her retirement, but it's something that we can look at to where we bring her back like through the temp agency, like the ITS Quest, to see if she could come back. But we're still researching that to make sure that before we reach out to her, we are not placing her in jeopardy of messing up her retirement.
I think she can come back as a consultant based on the fact that a lady I'm working with here in Elephant Butte is retired, but she is basically doing what she retired from, not here, but in another county. And yeah, she has no issue with that. It runs
I
through
think
her
that's
company.
something we need to do sooner rather than later. I mean, does she have to be an employee of the city to be able to complete her job or to help, or can she
I mean,
do that?
One of the internal
Consultant.
controls is somebody needs to review a consultant's work. And it would be, where is that? Somebody, it's
Well, if we get a
SK.
finance director hired, rather
Yes,
than the finance director just coming in cold turkey and not having any idea of what the history and everything was.
now if
we
you
had
hired,
As a consultant to be able to say, hey, this is, kind of give her a roadmap, or whoever it is, give them a roadmap to, what needs to go where. I think that would be something that the city really needs to invest in.
you're absolutely right. Because let's say we bring a new candidate, they would be able to go through and be supported in their new position. It's not a sink or swim kind of deal. We'll be there to assist them and make the transition easier. Because we don't want a candidate to come in, spend a bunch of resources to find them, and then they decide that it's not their cup of tea.
Okay, did you have anything else, Javier?
No, sir, but I will be there next week, and if anyone wants to go by and ask me questions, I am in the treasurer's office, so I work for you, so feel free to come by and I'll give you time.
Right, so have we gone through both sections of A and B then?
I do think we need a approval of the committee for the preliminary budget. As he stated, as far as the this year's budget next year, so.
So what happens if we are late?
Javier, what happens if we're late on turning in the preliminary budget?
I mean, really nothing. We might get a small finding out of it if they even know, if Scott even knows that. But the deal is just dealing with, now it's Justin, so I know who our analyst is. I can talk to them about it. One of the things that we shouldn't be late on that budget based on the fact that it's such a forecast that we can put together, like I stated, last year's budget, we put that in and then we make the adjustments to it at the end of the year. Cause then we're gonna have to readjust it in July to reflect the true numbers that have come out. So if we take last year's July budget, we would be in a better position than to miss it.
Because if we go ahead and load it, that box is checked, we can come back and mold that to fit and get everything corrected before the final budget goes in.
You just amended basically.
Yeah.
I guess I just.
Yeah.
This budget is not even close.
And historically, this is pretty close to what we've done every year. It's just been with the finance director that's able to present some modifications to the finance committee.
Can we have another meeting after you get some of this together and do what's the date to submit it?
April 30th.
Can we have another meeting and he like does whatever? Updates and gives us
April 30th.
April Tuesdays, Tuesdays.
I don't see what other choice.
I honestly don't either. It's up to the pleasure of the committee, but that's the staff recommendation and Javier's recommendation. That we approve this preliminarily and then come back and make the adjustments that are needed for final.
I will entertain a motion. My thought is that I don't feel comfortable recommending the council pass something that knows not correct.
Veronica, does the preliminary budget have to go to council?
Unusual.
She's pulling double duty.
I'm sorry, TJ, what did you say?
You checking
Does the
relationships
preliminary budget have to go before council?
with our customers.
It will go before council.
So as soon as we
Okay,
get
so
that
there's no
going.
way we're gonna get it done, or are we gonna?
And
Prove
I
it.
know that.
Yeah, we should be in time.
That does not mean that they can't assist you in your market.
Tuesday.
Daniel, Carrie, and Kim.
Oh.
We'll have them work with you all and see who.
I have a call with Mike today. Let me double check, and then if we have to have a special meeting to approve the budget, then we will just have to call a special meeting.
Special council meeting, correct?
Correct.
This promotion to finally come to fruition is we have that 200.
I'll entertain a motion.
You might want to just table it and then we'll see what the numbers look like.
Yeah, the reason why I don't feel comfortable is because It's not real. The reason why I don't feel comfortable is because we're saying this is it, but it's not it. You know, and then and then seriously, it's better to tell the truth and say we don't have it and this is what's happening. Than to try to fix it without telling what's really happening. That's.
I mean, the city's in a bind. I think we need to own up to it and say, look, we're working on it, but I don't think submitting a budget that we know is, or we don't even know if it's close or not, or whatever, we don't know anything about it. I don't think that's the right thing to do, so.
Historically, other than just big capital projects and items, it stays very close to the same. But I see where you're coming from and we'll run with whatever recommendation the committee has.
Well, was it the 6/30/23, or I'm sorry, 6/30/24, the one you submitted? Oh, it's 23 for 24. Wasn't that the last one that Maryland did?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so then that is our benchmark. That's what we're using to create this new budget. Now, I wouldn't do that for 24 to roll into 25 because 24 isn't complete yet, but 24 doesn't have complete data. I am just assuming that your financial statements, your audited financial statements included a pretty decent budget. And that's how that idea came through.
But historically, gross receipts tax do increase annually. Revenue the city receives. So this is the same bet that we recommended. But it's up to the committee on your pleasure of construction you'd like to do. As statistically speaking, we should receive more in gross receipts tax than we did the previous year that we budgeted off.
This is the next month, if we're request to review, so we have two. I think there are two deadlines.
Javier mentioned it, one of them is the final budget. And then Javier, what's the other deadline, the LGBMS?
We have
Is that
the
correct?
quarterly reporting, and then we have the annual reporting, and then we also have the preliminary budget. So, and then after that, we do the final budget. Now, remember that the preliminary budget, we have to annualize anyway. So we still have the month of June that we have to go through and estimate what our expenses are going to be and what our revenue is going to be.
Yeah, but right now you're asking us we didn't really even hardly get a look at this. And you're saying we should like improve this. And we haven't asked questions, what's in this account.
And more than that, there's
Well-
nobody here that can answer questions.
Yeah, and that's, I think the general fund, this is I don't think the general fund's gonna move that much. Now, that's why I was very specific to the project funds, capital project funds, to tell me what has been closed out and what new money you've received, because that can differentiate greatly from one year to another. So know that my thought process behind this only includes the general fund and not the capital project funds, because you cannot apply that concept to this. And that's why I asked the fire chief and the mayor to go through and identify those specific things I stated, every new project and every closed out project, so we can do a roll forward on those. Now, the chair is correct. I don't know where I'm gonna get that information from.
So I've entertained a couple of motions. Nobody seems to want to make a motion to approve. So I guess maybe we should make a motion to table this until we can get somebody who can explain the budget to us and defend the budget and you know, I mean, give us a little bit more confidence that what we're recommending to the council is actually real. And I just, me personally, I can't I can't recommend something that, you know, we don't know if it's real, and we don't have anybody here that can tell us if it's real or answer any questions or give us any ability to defend this budget to the state, so.
One more question before we entertain that. One more question, Javier, I think, if we do we need to, what's the worst that could happen as far as if we don't do this, you mentioned a fine, but is it gonna mess up
It's a
any?
finding.
A finding,
A
not,
finding on it.
yeah, it's,
So
yeah, it's not
turn it in,
monetary.
It's not a money fine.
Money fine, okay.
Okay, it's a finding on the audit when they do it, say, hey, you didn't do this like.
So with that being said, it will mess up any future project for funding if we don't have a budget.
And
They can use it right on that.
the people that know more than me can correct me if I'm wrong, but my understanding is depending on the condition of the results from our audit, if it's poor, we're limited on what we can receive from capital.
I,
So the more fine, the less capital.
Mr. Chair, I think that getting in the, let's say we go through the route of let's get in the right numbers. We might be dinged, but it's not gonna be detrimental to the city. And that's if,
And how long do you anticipate that would take?
it's
Because here's
just,
my impression is if this budget is due Tuesday and has to be
No.
recommended by. the
No.
council, there's no way that's gonna happen anyway. Am I correct or incorrect?
you're correct.
So what's the rush?
As staff, we're just trying to keep our head above water and try to get the things in the box checked that we need to get checked.
And I want you to know that we are really, really appreciative of all of you and your staff's making work. It's just a mountain and it's something that really isn't fair to you guys with the position you're in either. But I don't know if us recommending this is gonna make things better or worse.
The way I view it, it's up to your pleasure. We can take the ding and go on and see how it affects us with the finding on our audit, along with all the other findings that we are seeing that are probably gonna happen. Or we can choose to load what we think is a safe preliminary projection and then mold it to where it needs to be as we get numbers. Either way, staff is fine. We're going to continue doing the work that we're gonna do. It's really just up to which direction the committee would like us to go.
And when you say this is a safe budget, you're just basing that on the fact that it was created by Mayor.
And the fact that gross receipts revenue historically increases. If we were safe to budget this much last year, we're safe to budget preliminary this year.
But we don't have an idea if gross receipts has actually increased or stayed the same or dropped.
With the Walmart fire in Clovis, I would bet money, and I'm not a betting man.
But we don't know.
Well, and I don't have the numbers on paper.
Chris, I think, you did make that motion, Chris?
I made a motion to table until we can get some more answers as to whether these are fairly correct, if we know what our actual revenues are projected to be.
I would like to second that because I'd rather be upfront with everybody and say, hey, we're trying to do it correctly moving forward. And we know that y'all are doing the best you can, but I'd rather, from our point of view, do things right moving forward and take it in everything.
It's up to the pleasure of the committee. Javier, correct me if I'm wrong, but loading the preliminary budget as the previous budget is a very common practice through most municipalities, right?
Not for municipalities that are in good standing. Because what they're doing right now is they're basically hammering out where the money wants to be spent on. So everybody's coming in, with that was hat in hand wanting their department to have more money. But in this situation, yes, when you don't have anything else to go with.
So are we in good standing or are we not in good standing?
We all know that, no, you're not in good standing right now.
So I'm gonna stick with my original motion.
Yes.
Rustin seconded it. Any other discussion? So those in favor of tabling the budget until we get more information, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Okay, the motion passes. Moving on to item 5, any other business, any matter not known about or which could not have been reasonably foreseen prior to the time of posting the agenda.
Discussed anything and everything we possibly could.
Well, I have a quick question not related to the budget, but the longstanding fire that you guys are monitoring, is that something we're gonna be able to bill Hampton Farms for, or is that just something that is?
It's not our standard practice to bill for structure fires because we receive funding from the state through our fire. Or specifically structure.
Have you guys incurred a lot of overtime, I would assume, because of that
That and just the normal day-to-day operations of not having enough people. Yes.
unusual overtime, I guess.
I'd have to look at the numbers after it's completed. I would just say that it's maybe just 5% more. It's really not gonna be that much more overtime because we're just out of people and we're just running short. So basically, instead of having 8 people at the station, we have 6 with 2 out of the fire, which makes our operations more limited.
Any projection on how much longer that's gonna?
With the winds, the next few days, it should burn quicker. But the problem is it's not safe for us to make entry and really extinguish. If there was a life to save, we would bat an eye, but there's nothing to save. So the best course of action is to make sure that it doesn't spread to any other exposures around it and let it burn, do its thing.
For that,
Yes, sir.
all right, if there is no other business, we'll go ahead and adjourn.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.